Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this, the special meeting number 2 of 2025. I'll commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Butchla people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Do we have any apologies or leave of absence? I see we have 2 councillors attending via Teams, Councillor Whelan and Councillor O'Keefe. We'll move to special item number 2, disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Move to item 3.1, the adopted infrastructure charges resolution and infrastructure charges incentives. This is pages 3 to 71. Moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Cosgrove. Any speakers or questions? Yep, Councillor Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say that my sense of this role is that potentially moments where you feel like you have made a real difference might be few and far between, and I think it feels like it's a role that's going to be a pretty hard slog at times. But I am really proud to have been like a dog with a bone on this one and pushed it through to us getting it onto the agenda today. I don't think that would have happened without me being actually willing to, make myself a target. I actually had a member of staff when I was discussing this, many times I've discussed this, say, you do know, the development industry could come after you if you put your head up above the parapet on this one and say we should charge them more. But if I was only here for self-interest, I probably wouldn't have done that, and I would have let the process that was in track to get this eventually on the table to play through and maybe keep my head down a little bit. But I think we need to do this now. We need to do this today, and we need to not make developers pay their fair share, because that would actually be a much higher charge, but we need to make them pay more. I think we're raising most charges to, I think it's 34.5 across the most common categories. That should be, if it was to be paying the fair share of the growth that we are required to fund by taking these charges, probably somewhere in the order of $50,000 to $60,000 per charge. So the other thing I wanted to comment on and just make colleagues aware of is that there could be a perceived unfairness towards categories because we've separated the Fraser Coast, and for example, Hervey Bay had a different charge to Maryborough, and we are seeing a larger increase to the Maryborough charge. But the way we need to think about this is not Hervey Bay, Maryborough being a differential charge to the Hervey Bay charge. We need to think about the charge in relation to the cost that it actually costs to deliver the infrastructure that taking that charge requires us to do. And so the charge is heavily discounted on the cost that we incur to deliver infrastructure under our LGIP. So that's why it's appropriate that these all go to the cap, and we need to keep pushing the state government to fix this system. It hasn't been properly indexed since 2011. It is way behind where it needs to be. We are being strangled by growth in this community, and we need these charges to be higher, and that's why going to the maximum cap that's allowed under the state government is appropriate, and it needs to go higher. Let me make that very clear. So I commend this to councillors. As I said, a small win, still not enough, but I'm very happy to see this happening today.
Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Cosgrove said. I just would like to note that it's imperative that our current residents are not expected to subsidise the significant financial shortfall associated with each newly developed block on the Fraser Coast. Given that the Fraser Coast region shows no signs of decelerating, we must ensure the necessary financial capacity to provide infrastructure for the entire region, not solely for new developments. The escalation of civil construction's costs ranging from 40 to 62% necessitates these increased charges to alleviate the financial burden on existing ratepayers and residents. I reiterate the substantial disparity between current charges and the true cost is no longer financially sustainable, so I will be supporting this motion.
Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.2, pages 72 to 130, the adoption of the 2025-26 operational plan, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Chapman. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.3 on pages 131 to 197 of the agenda, the adoption of the budget policies, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.4 on pages 198 to 333, the adoption of the fees and charges, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Phil Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.5, Item 3.5, the budget adoption, differential rates, charges.
So you're doing
Oh, sorry.
3.1.
Yeah, 3.1A, differential rates, charges on page 334 to 341, moved by myself, seconded Councillor Farage. All in favour? Any opposed? Sorry, I'll do that again. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Is that right? Can we do that one? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Item, resolution 3.1B is described on page 341. Moved by myself, seconded Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Resolution 3.1C, as described on page 341, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Resolution 3.1.D, as described on pages 342 to 343, moved by myself, seconded Councillor Govers. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.2.1, the Disaster Management and Resilience Levy on pages 344 to 345, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to seconding this motion with you. I'd like to say that this motion is actually supporting right across our region towards our disaster, but also the resilience side of it, where we can actually use funds from this to improve drainage and with what we've just seen, and it's a good thing that this is actually spread right across our community. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. 3.3.1, the wastewater charges at page 345, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On page 347, item 3.3.2, water charges, moved by myself, seconded Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.3.3, waste charges on page 349, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Phil Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Section 3.4, concessions on rates and charges, concessions for pensioners. This is moved Councillor O'Keefe, page 355. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.4.2, concession for religious entities, community and welfare, care facilities for aged persons, and persons with disabilities and emergency services. This move Councillor Byrne, seconded Councillor Phil Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.4.3, conservation areas concession on page 355. This is moved Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On page 355, item 3.4.4, financial hardship. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On page 355, item 3.4.5, economic development. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Chapman, seconded Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On page 355 again, the refurbishment concession, item 3.4.6, is moved Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Paul Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.4.7 on pages 355 to 356, the limit to increases in water and wastewater charges. This is moved Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.4.8 on page 356, the water charge relief. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.5 on page 356, interest on overdue rates and charges, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Govers. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On page 356, levy and payment of rates and charges, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.7, prescribed business activities and code of competitive conduct. Page 356 to 357. Is there a mover for this? I'll move it. Seconded Councillor Chapman. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.8, statement of estimated financial position on page 357. I'll move this. Is there a seconder? Wait, Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3.9, adoption of budget, pages 357 to 358. I'll move this. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. In moving this, I just want to thank everyone for the team effort this has been. We have worked together now for months, gone through every single section of the council, looking for savings, looking for how we can deliver for the community, how we can how we can continue to deliver for the community to make sure this is a wonderful place to live, where people can see themselves going forward into the future with jobs, enjoying life, raising families, and pursuing their activities. Today we hand down the budget for the 25-26. This is a budget that focuses on the basics: better roads, reliable water and sewerage, quality waste services, and improved public spaces that enhance the livability of our communities. This budget is shaped by two realities: the need to invest in the services and infrastructure that underpin our lifestyle, and the growing pressure of rising costs and reduced external funding. This budget was not an easy budget. This budget, every year it's difficult. Every year we do an enormous amount of work to ensure that rates are kept as low as possible. Over the past 5 years, the price of gravel has gone up by 62%. Earthworks have doubled in cost. Footpath replacements are 58% more expensive. These aren't small one-off increases. These are increases that compound over time. At the same time, council's funding from other levels of government is falling. A change to the way the federal government's financial assistance grants are calculated has seen our support cut by more than $5 million over the past 3 years. As I raised this morning when I met with the Premier and the Treasurer, the state government is also phasing out the waste levy rebate, which will add another $1 million to our costs this year in this budget, and $22 million over the next 6 years in our budget for our community, for our residents. Despite these pressures, we are staying the course, delivering the essential services that residents rely on every day, whilst investing in the infrastructure that supports our future. This year, we've allocated $527 million to our total budget, including a capital works program of $198 million. This program ranges from multi-million-dollar upgrades to essential infrastructure like the Burgowan Water Treatment Plant and Walker Street in Maryborough, to local improvements such as a new playground in Glenwood and footpath renewals in Granville. From Walker's Point Road to Bopple Drive, we are building and we are ensuring that our communities are safe, great places to live. Council has 55 different rating categories, so the changes to rates bills vary from property to property. We're continuing to support more than 32,000 households through the residential rates cap, helping to ease the impact of sharp land valuation increases. For most households, the total increase to their bill, including rates, levies, and utility charges, will be between $6 and $9 per week. This is a budget for today and for tomorrow. While we are investing in safer roads, upgrading parks, and water infrastructure now, we are also planning for long-term growth. Our population is booming, and that brings both benefits and challenges. More people means more jobs, more housing, and better services. Just recently, Jetstar announced more than 35,000 extra low-fare seats on Harvey Bay routes, a direct response to this growth. We're also seeing private investment in new shopping centres, healthcare facilities, and residential estates. But growth doesn't pay for itself. In 2025-26, Council expects to collect about $4.5 million in rates from new properties, but it will cost more than $7.2 million to provide the services to those same areas. And over the next decade, developer contributions won't even cover half of what's needed to build the infrastructure our growing region requires. That's why we're raising the developer infrastructure charges to the maximum allowed under Queensland legislation, $34,500 per lot, so they can go some way towards paying their fair share. These contributions help fund critical infrastructure like roads, drainage, and sewerage, the things these new houses and new businesses rely on, and that's why they should help pay towards them. But even at the capped rate, it's not enough. In regional Queensland, developer contributions cover just 39% of the cost of trunk infrastructure. The state government's cap framework hasn't kept pace with rising construction costs and hasn't been properly indexed since 2011. As a result, councils across Queensland are facing a $2.2 billion funding shortfall over the next 4 years. We're not just pointing out the problem, we're calling for a solution. We're backing the Local Government Association of Queensland's call for urgent reform of the Queensland Infrastructure's charging framework and stronger support for councils to deliver the infrastructure that communities need as a result of this growth. We continue to advocate to other levels of government, as I did this morning with the Premier and the Treasurer, to help us deliver priority projects for our growing region, like a new Fraser Coast water grid, upgrades to major roads, and new community facilities that we need. Council is also reviewing how we incentivize and plan for future development to ensure it is occurring in the right locations with the right infrastructure to support it. A major study of the Nikenbah-Dundarran growth corridors will help guide this. Our message is clear. We are not against growth, but it must be well managed and it must be fair. Ratepayers cannot be expected to shoulder the full cost of new development. Council is committed to strategic growth and livability. We want the Fraser Coast to remain a region where older residents can age comfortably and younger generations see a bright future to live, work, and raise families here. That's the core of this budget, investing in essential services today while planning responsibly for tomorrow. We're working hard to make every dollar count, investing wisely to keep our region moving forward. Above all, we're committed to maintaining the unique lifestyle we love in one of the world's most beautiful places to live. Thank you. Are there any further speakers or questions? Councillor Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This morning I'll be speaking against this budget but voting in favour of it. This position is not one that I take lightly. Through more than 40 hours of budget proceedings in this chamber, we as a council have wrestled with tough decisions on behalf of our community. These conversations have been robust, challenging and at times very frustrating, but they are underpinned by a shared commitment to the people of the Fraser Coast. We are not alone in these challenges. Over 60% of councils across Australia are now in financial distress. Local government is increasingly being asked to do more with less, while absorbing the impacts of reduced funding from both state and federal governments, regardless of which party is in power. The continuous offloading of assets and responsibilities to councils without commensurate funding is not just unsustainable, it is unfair to our ratepayers. There's a common perception that more growth and more housing automatically means more rates, so we must be financially better off. but that's not how it works. The cost of delivering the essential infrastructure to support new developments, roads, water, sewerage, drainage, far exceeds the infrastructure charges we are permitted to recover from developers. That's why we are increasing those charges to the maximum allowed under the Queensland Government legislation. But even at that cap, it's simply not enough to meet the cost of real growth in our region. This year's budget reflects a back to basics approach because we must remain grounded in financial reality. Roads, waste, drainage, rubbish, these are the foundations and they must be maintained first. I want to be clear, there are elements of this budget I do not support, but there is a broader fiscal picture that we must maintain. I want to thank my fellow councillors for their dedication and genuine care for this region, and I especially want to thank our council staff for the many long hours and the modelling work that made this budget possible. This has not been an easy process, nor a perfect outcome, but it's a fiscally responsible one. And I remain committed to working with this council to continue advocating for our fair share from other levels of government and improve the livability and vibrancy of the Fraser Coast for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I speak today to confirm my support for this budget. It has not been an easy task for any of us, but it is necessary to ensure the continuing delivery of vital services and infrastructure for this growing region. While I support the direction of this council, I feel it is important to point out that higher levels of government must also recognise the growing strains being placed on local governments and councils across Queensland. Our region is one of the fastest growing in the state, and yet we are facing significant financial pressures that are largely outside our control. The rising costs of materials, fuel, and the living expenses affect not only our residents, but also the cost of delivering infrastructure and maintaining services. These pressures are part of the reason council had no choice but to set a budget as it did. In addition to that, all councils over the population figures of over 80,000 have seen a reduction in approximately $5 million in federal assistance grants, a funding cut that has real consequences on a community. On top of that, we are now absorbing over $1 million in waste levy costs that were once supported by a state government levy. These are burdens that local governments simply cannot carry alone. It must be said that existing infrastructure charges do not come close to covering the true cost of the growth that is required. This puts increasing pressure on existing rate base to fill the gap. This has to be filled for the sustainable path forward. Despite the challenges, I want to thank all the staff involved in this complex process. Your efforts to balance community needs with financial responsibility deserves acknowledgement. This is a budget of necessity, not a luxury, and while I stand with my fellow councillors in supporting it, I urge our state and federal counterparts to step up and support councils like ours that are doing their best with limited tools. Thank you.
Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to sincerely thank the entire team for their hard work on what has been an especially challenging budget. If I thought the first one was tough, this one really did rock the boat here. Your patience in answering every question, your willingness to dig deeper in search of efficiencies, and your ongoing professionalism have not gone unnoticed, and I truly respect and appreciate your commitment. After careful consideration, I've concluded that this budget represents a satisfactory outcome under very difficult circumstances. Am I 100% happy with it? No, but that's the nature of compromise. Given the pressures we face, this budget is realistic. With the federal and state governments continue to scale back funding for local government and increasing depreciation schedules placing further strain on our resources, we're simply unable to do everything we would like to. The reduction of financial assistance grants and the loss of waste levy have affected all councils across the board. Add to that our growing population, the ongoing housing crisis, increased community expectations and the lack of appropriate funding mechanisms, it is clear that the pressure on our financial position is significant. Every local government is in the same predicament. This budget is not about grand plans or new initiatives. It's about doing what we can, where we can, with what we have. It's practical, responsible, and focused on continual delivery of essential services to our community. While the circumstances are far from ideal, the hard work has helped us deliver a budget that will keep our community moving forward. Thank you.
Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Truscott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been one of the hardest budgets I've had to consider, and I'll be honest, my heart says no, but my head says yes. My heart says no because I feel for our community. I know what it means for everyday people when costs go up, when rates rise. It's tough out there. People are stretched already, and I don't take lightly what any new budget means for them. And as we've heard multiple times already this morning, the additional burdens placed on local governments by other levels. But my head says yes because the alternative is worse. The reality is, without the budget, we simply can't deliver the services, the infrastructure and the support that our community expects and deserves. As my colleagues have also done, I want to acknowledge the enormous effort from our council staff in bringing this budget together, particularly Marion and Tyson and their teams. The hours, the analysis, the back and forth, it's an enormous process. And I know how much work has gone in behind the scenes, so thank you. But I want to say this, I am frustrated. I've said for years now that local government continues to be left behind by the state and federal levels. We carry more responsibilities than ever before with fewer funding streams, and it's our residents who end up footing the bill. I honestly believe we should be showing these burdens on our rates notices so people can see where the increases are truly coming from. The drop in funding from other levels of government and the staggering cost increases we've been forced to absorb. It's not fair and it's not sustainable. So yes, I will reluctantly support the budget, but not because I'm happy with it, but because the alternative would be more damaging. But as we all know, this has to change. Local government can't keep doing more with less. We need real funding reform and genuine support from the state and federal governments, not just their nice words. Thanks.
Councillor Govers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm voting for this budget. However, while Council is investing heavily in our community to stay in a good financial state, and I thank all our team for helping us along the way, I would like to note that Council cannot continue to have less contribution from the federal and state governments. The reduction in support to councils from them is significant. Our depreciation is huge, our disasters are more frequent, and we need real action to be sustainable for our residents now and into the future. When Council must consider between raising rates and cutting services, it's not a budgeting problem. This is an out-of-date funding model affecting cost of living in today's real world. Our federal and state governments need to look at why councils receive the lowest level of funding. They need to contribute to the councils without councils needing to apply and compete against other councils to get the basics to live by. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Truscott.
Yes, everybody said properly what I think, and I haven't written anything out, but all I want to say and pose a question to the federal government especially. I've been in business a long time, and one thing we don't do in business, which we probably should in private business, is provide funding for capital depreciation, whereas councils have to do that and come up with the cash. My question to federal members is, how are we going to do this? Thank you.
Any further speakers? Councillor Wheeland.
Yes, I'll be supporting the budget today with great reluctance, but I'll definitely be speaking against it. The current funding model for our council is simply not sustainable. Our current situation is not the fault of council, and at the same time, it's not the fault of our communities. Yet our communities and council together are on the receiving end of millions of dollars of funding cuts from state and federal governments, who have cost shifted much of our must-have works funding onto the ratepayer. Until this changes, pressures on council will not cease to grow. Let me state these statistics. From funding of 2% of our country's GDP received by councils historically to 0.51 of 1% now. This is not sustainable, and make no mistake, the other levels of government know we can't continue to deliver for our community without these funds. There is no win with either side of this vote, and now 70% of our councils are currently in deficit or going broke, and under the current funding arrangements, this can only get worse. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Cosgrove?
Thank you, Mr Chair. This has been a very difficult budget for me to consider, and to be completely frank, I've been very anguished over it, and I've been oscillating between supporting and not supporting the budget. I am supporting the budget today because, as Councillor Truscott rightly pointed out, what's the alternative? We have to keep delivering for our community, but I feel like, you know, the canary in the coal mine called local government funding model was dead before I even got here. This is a broken model. We can't go on like this. And there's a national debate, or, you know, national news at the moment about federal politics, and there's talk about, you know, they're going to change the super requirements for super and how they tax super accounts over $3 million, and a discussion around, is it fair to tax unrealised capital gains? Well, welcome to the rating system. And this isn't on super over $3 million. This is over on people's family home. Is nothing sacred in our economy if we think as a society it's important to have housing for people, and that is actually a right and a privilege that we want people to be able to achieve. We can't tie forever funding infrastructure to paper gains on the value of people's homes and say, your ULV now is 40% higher, and if we don't cap, you'll pay 40% more in rates. It is ridiculous. We have capped, and we are historically the lowest cap we have had as a council, but we've had historic rises. And I think we need to consider budget after budget whether we can continue to have historically low caps, because it is not fair to say that your paper value of your home has just skyrocketed. What's the alternative? What is the alternative? You know, like, fundamentally, our whole system is, you know, oh, you've got this responsibility, you've got that responsibility. Ultimately, anything we do is actually a state responsibility under the Constitution. And you know, like, to be frank, as citizens, who cares? It just needs to get done. It just needs to get done in a way that is fair. You know, we have a housing crisis. We know about that. But is the house going to have a road to it? Will there be footpaths? How is all this stuff being funded? You can't say, hey, here's a home, and now let's bankrupt you because the ULV of the land that it's on is just going to keep going up and up and up. So, look, this was a really tough budget. We spent hours and hours and hours and went line item by line item through these things. We've got a boot on our throat called growth. We've got another one on our groin called depreciation. It's just crazy cost escalation, and, you know, 80 cents in the dollar of tax is taken by the federal government, 17 cents by the states, 3 cents by local governments. So we need some of that, 97 cents, redirected to infrastructure for our local communities. Sorry about my level of passion on this, but I just think something needs to majorly change in our nation in how we fund critical infrastructure for growing communities such as ourselves.
Absolutely.
Hold on.
Any further speakers or questions? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. I would like to also echo the sentiments expressed around the table here this morning. That being that, first of all, I'd like to thank the staff for their efforts and my colleagues for the hours of deliberations and considerations that they have taken. It is a difficult budget, but I agree with my colleagues, and I'll be supporting the budget as put by the Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. Just to echo my colleagues' words as well. Over the years, we've been involved in many different budgets. This has probably been one of the hardest that we've gone through. But as we know, for our region to keep going the way we are, and to make sure we can provide the services that the people that we serve expect that we need to make this hard decision. So I will be supporting the budget, even though it's been a very hard process. But please be assured to our region as well that we have challenged, we have asked hard questions, we've done what we can do to steward what we've been entrusted with, and we'll continue to ask those hard questions moving forward as well. But I will be supporting this budget.
Thank you. And can I reiterate that, Councillor Sanderson, we are citizens elected by our communities to come here and look after funding the assets of the organisation and ensure we are financially sustainable and that we continue to deliver what's expected in our community. And I want to thank the way everyone has conducted themselves in questioning and bringing forward ideas and ensuring that we have a document in front of us today through the diligent professional work of our staff and the input of councillors. A budget that, again, not everyone is completely happy with, but it is something that we can carry forward to deliver services and infrastructure for our community over the coming financial year. And I want to thank everyone for their advocacy, their participation, the debating. There's never going to be, unanimous agreement on all issues, but everyone has represented their divisions really diligently and really professionally. And I want to thank everyone for what you've done in this budget process. Thank you. Are there any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 10:37. Thank you.